Not every togetherness needs to be announced. Not every closeness needs to be explained. But what if, in the middle of the busiest schedules in the global music industry, these two names are always found together, without announcements, without clarifications, without words? Welcome to Jikook Lover, the channel where small details turn into massive questions. Before we continue, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe because this story is not about coincidence. It's about consistency that's far too precise to ignore. Is this simply a strong friendship or something much deeper, quietly protected from the world? Let's begin. In an industry that thrives on exposure, it is often the unseen moments that speak the loudest. While the world is busy counting schedules, analyzing promotional strategies, and dissecting public agendas, one pattern continues to repeat itself without ever being officially announced. Jimin and Jungkook, two names permanently etched into global attention, keep appearing within the same rhythm. Not on grand stages, not in press statements, but in small moments that almost slip past unnoticed, yet are far too consistent to be dismissed as coincidence. The question is simple, yet unsettling. Why is there always time? Amid schedules so overwhelming they're hard for ordinary people to comprehend. Rehearsals, recordings, international travel, individual obligations, separate projects, the two are still found sharing the same space. Sometimes only for minutes. Sometimes without cameras. Sometimes captured purely by chance, by eyes too observant to look away. And this is where the world begins to pause. Because coincidence can happen once. Twice may still be forgiven. But when the same pattern emerges repeatedly, consistently, across different phases of life and career, the question shifts from what is happening to why does this keep happening? There are no announcements, no clarifications, and precisely there, the mystery grows. Jikook have never sold their togetherness as a headline narrative. The world did that on its own. Fans assembled the fragments. Media quietly observed. Every small detail, a brief glance, familiar habits, overlapping timelines, became part of a larger puzzle. A puzzle that, strangely, time has never managed to erase. When solo schedules were announced, many assumed distance would follow. Instead, the opposite occurred. Between separate agendas, they were still found sharing moments that were not required. And in the entertainment world, what is unnecessary often reveals far more truth than what is scheduled. Many attempt to rationalize it. They call it long-standing friendship, group bonds, comfort. All of it sounds reasonable, until a quieter, sharper question emerges. Why does this togetherness feel protected rather than displayed? Because there is a profound difference between togetherness that happens and togetherness that is chosen. In most celebrity cases, closeness follows the camera. With Jikook, the camera often lags behind. And that is precisely what makes this story different. It is not loud, not aggressive, not defensive. It simply exists, repeatedly, consistently. Longtime fans remember that this dynamic was not born yesterday. It grew slowly, through adolescence, debut pressure, global stardom, and now maturity. Many relationships in the industry shift over time, yet this one seems to have found its own rhythm. Quieter, more guarded, more intentional. International media have begun to frame this phenomenon not as cheap gossip, but as a study in human connection under extreme pressure. How two individuals continue to anchor each other without turning their bond into public consumption. In an era of oversharing, choosing to protect something feels almost radical. There is one kind of moment fans often discuss, not because it is dramatic, but because it is silent. When one appears exhausted, the other is always within the same radius. Not always touching, not always speaking, sometimes simply sitting there. And in that stillness, emotion works the hardest. Because people do not make time for everyone. Time is the most expensive currency for global figures. And when that time is repeatedly spent on the same person, the world begins to read messages that were never spoken. Messages that need no confirmation because consistency has already said enough. Of course, not everyone agrees. Some call it fan projection. Others accuse over-romanticization. Yet even those criticisms fail to explain one thing. If all of this were merely an illusion, why has the pattern never truly stopped? Every time the conversation fades, a new moment appears. Every time distance is expected, togetherness resurfaces. as if an invisible thread keeps pulling them back to the same point. And perhaps that is the core of this story. Not labels, not definitions, but two people who, in a world that demands everything from them, still choose each other as the most stable place to return to. Quietly, but consistently. In the history of pop culture, the most unforgettable connections are often not the loudest ones, but the ones that endure. And Jikook, in all their silence, may be writing a narrative that is impossible to ignore. There is a moment in every global phenomenon when the conversation shifts. It is no longer about what is seen, but about what is consistently not denied by time. Jikook have reached that moment. Not through statements, not through confirmations, but through a silence that has grown heavier with every passing year. In a culture obsessed with exposure, repetition without explanation becomes its own form of language, and Jimin and Jungkook seem to speak it fluently. Observers often forget how fragile togetherness can be inside an industry built on fragmentation. Solo schedules are not merely professional decisions. They are structural forces designed to pull individuals into separate orbits. Different teams, different timelines, different pressures. Most bonds thin under that weight. Some dissolve quietly. Others survive only as memories. Yet here, something refuses to fade. What unsettles many is not the presence of affection, but the discipline behind it. Because affection alone does not survive chaos. Discipline does. Again and again, moments surface where they could have chosen distance, yet did not. Airports at odd hours. Shared rides when separate arrangements would have been easier. Familiar glances exchanged without context. None of these moments are spectacular on their own. Their power lies in accumulation. The world notices patterns because patterns imply intention. And intention is where speculation begins to feel dangerous. Fans argue fiercely over interpretation, yet even disagreement fuels the narrative's longevity. Because whether one sees deep friendship, emotional reliance, or something more intimate, all sides must confront the same undeniable truth. Jikook continue to choose proximity when distance would be understandable. Psychologists who study human attachment under stress often point out that people gravitate toward what feels safe when the external world becomes overwhelming. Safety does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like familiarity. Sometimes it looks like someone who knows your silences better than your words. And sometimes it looks like consistency that never asks to be noticed. This is where the story grows more complex. Because Jikook's togetherness is not chaotic. It does not disrupt professionalism. It does not sabotage individual growth. In fact, it seems to coexist seamlessly with both. That alone challenges many assumptions about closeness in high-pressure environments. Instead of limiting them, the bond appears to stabilize them. That observation has led some analysts to suggest that whatever this connection is, it functions as an anchor rather than a distraction. And anchors are not chosen lightly. There is also the question of restraint. In an era where personal narratives are monetized and intimacy often becomes content, Jikook's refusal to frame their closeness explicitly is striking. They allowed just enough visibility for authenticity to be felt, but never enough to satisfy curiosity completely. This balance is difficult to maintain. It requires mutual understanding and shared boundaries. Boundaries, after all, are not built alone. What makes this restraint even more compelling is that it persists despite constant pressure. Questions are asked endlessly. Theories circulate daily. Yet neither denial nor confirmation comes. Silence remains intact. And silence, when sustained for years, stops being avoidance. It becomes a statement in itself. There is a quiet confidence in that. It suggests that whatever they share does not require validation from the outside world. That it exists fully even if misunderstood. That it is strong enough to withstand speculation without being reshaped by it. Still, the emotional impact on fans cannot be ignored. For many, Jikook represent a rare kind of connection, one that feels genuine in a landscape often accused of artificiality. Their interactions feel unpolished. Their comfort feels earned. And in a global culture hungry for authenticity, such dynamics become symbolic far beyond the individuals themselves. They become mirrors. People see in Jikook what they long for in their own lives. Someone who stays. Someone who understands without explanation. Someone who makes time even when time is scarce. This projection is not accidental. It is invited by consistency. Yet there is another layer that often goes unspoken. The possibility that silence is also protection. Not from fans, but from a system that is rarely kind to relationships that do not fit neat categories. In such a context, discretion becomes not secrecy, but survival. That perspective reframes everything. What if the lack of definition is not confusion, but care? What if the refusal to label is a way of preserving something fragile in a world eager to dissect it? Suddenly, the narrative shifts from mystery to intention, from uncertainty to quiet resistance. And that is where the story becomes truly powerful. Because resistance does not always look loud. Sometimes it looks like showing up again tomorrow. Sometimes it looks like choosing the same person over and over without explanation. Sometimes it looks like letting the world talk while you remain steady. Jikook have mastered that steadiness. As years pass, the question is no longer whether their bond will change. Everything changes. The question is how it will transform. Will it remain quiet? Will it become visible in new ways? Or will it retreat further into privacy as the world grows louder? Fans speculate endlessly, but one thing remains constant. Attention has not driven them apart. If anything, it seems to have refined the way they protect what matters. That alone is rare. In pop culture history, many iconic pairings burned brightly and disappeared just as fast. Their intensity consumed them. Jikook, by contrast, moves slowly. They evolve. They endure. And endurance, more than intensity, is what leaves a mark on history. Perhaps that is why this story refuses to end. Because it does not rely on revelation. It thrives on continuity. And as long as Jimin and Jungkook continue to be found in the same quiet spaces, between schedules, between expectations, between the noise of the world, the conversation will persist. Not because people want answers, but because some stories feel too real to ignore, even when they remain unnamed. So here is the question that now echoes louder than ever, the one fans debate late into the night, the one no official statement has ever touched. If Jikook's togetherness has survived distance, pressure, fame, and time, if it has remained intact without labels, without confirmation, without spectacle, then when the industry finally loosens its grip, when the schedule's slow, and the world stops watching so closely, will their silence finally break? Or will it prove that the strongest bond they ever shared was never meant to be explained at all?